Panama is the most overlooked jurisdiction when it comes to asset protection planning. Hello there, my name is Javier Correa and I'm the legal director here at the Rothbard Group. And today I want to talk about asset protection here in the Republic of Panama. When we talk about asset protection, a lot of the clients come to us and they've already been told to set up a Cook Islands Trust or something in the South Pacific or Belize or some far-flung island, God knows where. And I tell them, you don't have to go very far to get robust asset protection. You can find it right here in the Republic of Panama. And today, not only do I want to focus on asset protection in general, but I want to zoom in on a very powerful tool that is only available in the Republic of Panama and in the Principality of Liechtenstein. Something very rare that you're not going to easily find in a jurisdiction outside of the ones I just outlined, and that is the Private Interest Foundation. So when we talk about asset protection, many people think of a trust. Now, I do want to clarify that a holding company can also hold a lot of potential when it comes to asset protection with proper planning, with a proper shareholders agreement, but let's assume you are really keen on that kind of trust structure. Well, let me clarify that the Republic of Panama does have trust. So unlike other civil law jurisdictions, Panama has actually adopted the US-style, Delaware-style trust figure and has incorporated it into its legislation and has indeed civilized it in a way. And by civilized, I mean turned it into a civil law instrument that can be used within the civil law system. But regardless of that, and regardless of the fact that we have set up Panamanian trusts for many clients, today I really want to focus on the Private Interest Foundation, which is really something I want to say very unique to Panama, or largely unique to the Republic of Panama. Now, the Private Interest Foundation is a very interesting tool because it is truly the hybrid between the best of a corporation and the best of a trust. In other words, if you had a trust and a corporation and they were together and they had a baby, it would be a private interest foundation. Now, a private interest foundation, first of all, is an actual corporate entity. It is formed with the Panama Division of Corporations. So basically, you are a corporate entity, much like a corporation, not like a trust that is a contract. But at the same time, a foundation is an ownerless structure. A foundation doesn't have shareholders. A foundation has a founder, which is kind of like the settler of a trust. A foundation also has beneficiaries, much like a trust. And a foundation is governed by a foundational council, which acts sort of kind of like a trustee, but is kind of like the merger of a trustee and a board of directors of a corporation. Now, why do I love the Private Interest Foundation, and why has the Rothbard Group set up far more private interest foundations than trusts for its clients, even though we work with both foundations and trusts? Well, it's very simple. Number one, foundations generally have more asset protection because of their status as a corporate body. It is very clear that they are a separate entity with separate asset pools and with separate governance, whereas a trust is much more difficult. A trust is an agreement at the end of the day, and in many cases, when somebody wants to retain too much control and they're also the settler of a trust, and they also act as the trustee, or they can influence the trustee in a great deal, in many cases the trust can be declared a sham trust, in which case many of the asset protection figures of that trust are ultimately lost. Whereas in the foundation, because it has more of that corporate style governance, it is not impossible for the founder of a foundation to also sit on the foundational council of a foundation and ultimately not violate the rules that generate the asset protection within the context of a foundation. Now, that being said, it is important to note that in many cases when we talk about the intersection of corporate asset protection and tax law, we do have to take into consideration that, for example, in the United States, where many of our clients are from, private foundations don't really exist. Wyoming introduced the figure of the statutory foundation, but it's not really developed at this point. And so for tax purposes, you may find that a foundation will be treated like a trust in places like the United States, but it's basically for tax purposes only. From a corporate perspective, there are differences, clear differences between a trust and a foundation. Now, moving on to other benefits. A foundation allows you to essentially avoid probate, much like you're used to with a revocable living trust, which is kind of like the most typical trust recommended in the United States. Even though it doesn't yield many tax benefits, it does actually help you avoid probate, which is that very unpleasant situation where after your passing, courts get involved, and then ultimately all your assets are on display, creditors are called in, and your children or your heirs in general only get access to the assets after a very long and often costly process. So the private foundation definitely helps you with that as well. Now let's talk about tax neutrality from the foundation's perspective. Private interest foundations here in Panama are also tax neutral insofar as they only generate foreign source income. Why? Because just like Panamanian corporations and just like everything in Panama, they are governed by the territorial tax system, which means that foreign source income is simply not taxed in Panama. It is beyond the scope of the tax man, and that applies to foundations as well. So if a foundation generates only foreign source income, then there is no tax in Panama. You're going to have your yearly maintenance, and that's about it. In addition to that, let's say you want additional privacy. Well, in the case of a foundation, number one, you don't have to hire a professional trustee. You can have your own management company be the manager of the foundation. And unlike a corporation that requires 3 directors, which can be a combination of natural persons and corporations or LLCs, or just LLCs and corporations, or just natural persons, in the case of the foundation, you're going to need either 3 natural persons or 1 corporate director. So that means we can set up a foreign entity, for example, a US LLC, and that US LLC can be the director of your Panama foundation, granting you more privacy, more asset protection, and more flexibility overall. In addition to that, the Private Interest Foundation in Panama has the ability to bank locally here in the Republic of Panama, and has the ability to also bank in several jurisdictions around the world, including Switzerland, the United States, the Bahamas, and so forth. In addition to that, a Panama foundation can also have an underlying asset management company. So the foundation can be the shareholder of an asset holding company, which in turn is the one that has the wealth management accounts around the world in the aforementioned jurisdiction. So in my opinion, the Private Interest Foundation and Panama in general are definitely overlooked tools and an overlooked jurisdiction when it comes to asset protection, estate planning, and overall asset management around the world in interjurisdictional, international, multi-jurisdictional planning. And this is why we really promote it here at the Rothbard Group. Now, if you're interested in learning more about private interest foundations and you want to go into the nitty-gritty details of how a private interest foundation could be the secret tool that you've been waiting for to achieve that robust level of asset protection or estate planning, then go check out our website, rothbardgroup.com. We'd be more than happy to help you. In fact, I'll go on a call with you myself and I'll explain everything about private interest foundations, and I'd be more than happy to guide you through the entire process along with the Rothbard team to make sure that the right foundation is set up in the right way for you. So there you have it, folks. Panama, a great jurisdiction. Stay tuned for our next video where we're going to talk about Panamanian trusts that are also very valuable and very interesting from a planning perspective. And we hope to see you again soon. This was Javier Correa, Legal Director for the Rothbard Group.